My long-term girlfriend had a sudden, intense emotional outburst that completely shocked me and changed how I see her. Now I'm questioning everything about our future together. Do I stay and work through it, or is this a sign to walk away? I've been with my girlfriend for about 3 years now, and overall, we've built something really meaningful together. We've both put in genuine effort to make the relationship work, learning how to communicate better, how to argue without things getting out of hand, and even going to counseling twice to work through some of our patterns. She's had a difficult childhood, and I know that still affects how she processes emotions today. But despite that, she's a kind, caring, and loving person, and I truly do see a future with her. The challenge is that we are very different when it comes to handling emotions. She feels things very deeply and expresses them strongly, especially when she's upset. I, on the other hand, am much more laid back. I don't get angry easily, and I tend to stay quiet and think things through rather than react in the moment. Most of the time, this difference balances us out. But in stressful situations, it can create friction. Recently, we've been preparing to move into a new apartment. It's a big step for us, especially since we've already been living together for about a year and a half. This new place feels like the next stage, something more long-term, even something we've talked about as being suitable if we ever decide to have a child. So naturally, there's been some pressure around getting everything right. The issue started with a message from our current landlord. I had reached out to ask if we could stay an extra week beyond our notice period. My thinking was simple. We could use that extra time to paint the new apartment properly and move our things without rushing. Unfortunately, the landlord declined and made it clear we needed to move out as scheduled. When I told my girlfriend, she became upset almost immediately. At first, I thought it was just frustration about the situation, which I understood. But then she started directing that frustration toward me. She said it was partly my fault because of how I had worded the message. According to her, I shouldn't have framed it as a request. She believed I should have told the landlord that we couldn't move out in time, rather than asking if it was possible to stay longer. From my perspective, that wouldn't have made a difference. We are legally obligated to leave at the end of the notice period, and the landlord has the right to enforce that. Whether I asked or told him, I don't think the outcome would have changed. So I tried to stay calm and said that there wasn't much we could do about it now, and that we should focus on figuring out how to manage the move within the time we have. I also told her that if she felt strongly about it, she was free to contact the landlord herself and try a different approach. But instead of de-escalating, things got worse. She kept returning to the same point, repeating that I had handled it wrong and that I should have involved her before sending the message. I'll admit, I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. I saw it as a small, practical task. But to her, it clearly wasn't. As the conversation went on, her tone became more intense, and it started to feel less like a discussion and more like I was being blamed and criticized repeatedly. That's when I started to get defensive. I don't usually react that way, but being on the receiving end of that kind of frustration, especially when I felt like I had acted reasonably, made it hard to stay completely calm. At the same time, I've learned that when she reacts this strongly, there's often something else going on beneath the surface. Stress from work, family issues, or something that's been building up internally. So, after about an hour, when things had cooled slightly, I tried to approach it from that angle. I asked her if anything had happened during the day that might explain why she felt so triggered by this situation. My intention wasn't to dismiss her feelings, but to understand them better. Her response caught me off guard. She said she'd actually had a good day. For some reason, that answer made me feel even more frustrated. Because if nothing else was bothering her, then it meant that all of that anger was coming directly from this one situation, and being directed entirely at me. It made me feel like I had become the target of something disproportionate to what had actually happened. After everything that happened earlier, we decided to sit down and actually talk things through. I went into that conversation with a clear intention. I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to blame. I just wanted to set a boundary. I told her that when things escalate the way they did, when she raises her voice and directs that level of anger at me, it crosses a line for me. I tried to be very careful with how I phrased it. I made it clear that she has every right to feel angry, upset, or frustrated. I'm not trying to control her emotions or tell her what she can and can't feel. But I also told her that how those emotions are expressed matters. Acting out on me, escalating verbally, and turning that anger toward me instead of communicating calmly is something I can't accept. I also acknowledged my own part in it. I told her that I can get defensive when I feel attacked, and that I need to get better at stepping away earlier when I feel a conversation is getting heated. I wanted it to be clear that this wasn't about me being perfect and her being wrong. It was about both of us needing to handle conflict better. But she didn't take it that way. She kept repeating that her emotions are valid, that she has a right to feel them, and that by setting this boundary, I was rejecting her. According to her, if I couldn't accept her in those moments of anger, then I wasn't fully accepting her at all. I tried to explain again that I do accept her emotions, I just don't accept being on the receiving end of that kind of behavior. There's a difference between feeling something and acting it out in a way that hurts someone else. Then, out of nowhere, she asked me if I still liked her. It caught me off guard. I said, "Of course I do, because that's the truth." But I also added that she needed to understand that this boundary still stands. Apparently, that yes, but was enough to set something off in her. Later, she told me it triggered her fear of conditional love, that if there's a but, then the love isn't safe. What happened next escalated faster than I could process. She suddenly raised her voice again, louder this time, and started yelling that I needed to accept her as she is. She said I was making a big deal out of nothing, that I don't understand what it's like to feel that level of anger, and that I'm the one who can't handle it. It felt like everything I had tried to communicate calmly was being twisted into something else entirely. Then she stormed into the kitchen. I followed her, thinking maybe I could calm things down, or at least stop the situation from getting worse. But the moment I got close, I realized I had misjudged it. She was grabbing dinner out of a glass tray, and then she started hitting the spoon against it. Hard, repeatedly, aggressively. The sound alone was enough to make me freeze for a second. I tried to step in, to say something, anything that might ground the situation. But before I could even get a few words out, she snapped at me, yelling that I needed to go away, to leave her alone, that I was stupid for even coming near her. I didn't recognize her in that moment. She kept pacing around, yelling, moving with this intensity that felt completely out of control. It honestly felt like she was overtaken by something I couldn't reach or reason with. I've seen her upset before. We've had arguments, and earlier in the relationship there were smaller outbursts, but this was on a completely different level. And that's what unsettled me the most. Because we've already put in so much work into this part of our relationship. We've talked, we've learned, we've even gone to counseling. For a long time, it felt like we had made real progress. Those earlier outbursts had stopped, or at least reduced significantly. I thought we had moved past this phase. Seeing it come back like this, so intense, so uncontrolled, made me question everything. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about who was right or wrong anymore. I was just standing there, trying to process what I was seeing, and realizing that this wasn't something I could fix by saying the right thing or staying calm enough. I'm still trying to process what I saw that night. After everything escalated in the kitchen, after the yelling, the pacing, the intensity, I just stepped away. I went into the next room, because I didn't know what else to do. I've never seen her like that before. Not to that level. It honestly shook me. About 10 minutes later, she came in, calm again, like a switch had been flipped. She started explaining her reaction almost immediately. She said it had been a long time since something like that had happened, that she wished I hadn't seen her in that state. She told me she was afraid that I would now doubt the relationship because of her emotions, that her strong, fast-paced feelings, combined with her tendency to overthink, have always been something she struggles with. I just sat there listening. The truth is, I didn't know how to respond. I wasn't angry in that moment. I was still trying to understand what I had just witnessed. It felt like I had seen a completely different side of her, one that didn't match the version of her I've come to know over the past few years. Before I could even gather my thoughts, she walked away again and started crying. And I stayed there, stuck in my own head, because something had shifted for me. Not necessarily in a definitive this is over kind of way, but enough that I couldn't ignore it. It impacted how I see her, not just as my partner but as a person. And that's hard to admit, even to myself. I keep going back and forth in my mind, trying to make sense of it. On one hand, I know she's not a bad person. I know she's loving, caring, and that she's worked on herself. She's been to therapy before, and she's even admitted that sometimes she doesn't fully understand why she reacts the way she does. Most of the time, she's genuinely sweet and easygoing. That's the person I've built this relationship with. On the other hand, what I saw that night wasn't small. It wasn't just frustration or a normal argument. It was an intense emotional outburst that felt completely out of control. And that's what's sitting with me now, the unpredictability of it. She later explained that she was already angry at the landlord, and that I ended up becoming the target because I was the one who delivered the message. She also pointed out that she felt left out because I had sent the text without including her, which, looking back, I can understand. I could have acknowledged that sooner. I can see how that contributed to her frustration. But even with that context, I keep coming back to the same question. Does understanding the reason make the reaction okay? Because for me, it doesn't fully. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on my own role in all of this too. I know I'm not perfect. I grew up in an environment where it felt safer to stay quiet, to suppress emotions, to not draw attention to myself. That shaped me into someone who stays calm, sometimes too calm, and avoids escalation at almost any cost. It's something I've been actively working on for over a year now, learning to be more emotionally open, more expressive, and more present in the relationship. But even with that, I've never reached a point where I lose control like that. I've never yelled at her or anyone else in that way. And I think part of why this affected me so much is because it's so far outside of how I handle emotions myself. It made me feel unsafe, not physically, but emotionally. Like I didn't know what might happen if things escalated again. That's a hard feeling to sit with when you're thinking about a future with someone. After reading through other perspectives and really thinking about it, I've realized something important about how I handled the conversation. When I set my boundary, I framed it around her behavior, telling her that she shouldn't act that way toward me. Even though my intention was valid, I can see how that might have come across as controlling or rejecting to her, especially given her fear of conditional love. So, I'm going to approach it differently. Instead of focusing on what she can or can't do, I'm going to focus on what I will do. If an argument becomes heated to that level again, I will remove myself from the situation. Not as punishment, not as rejection, but as a way to protect myself and prevent things from escalating further. That feels like a healthier boundary, one that I can actually control and follow through on. But even with that clarity, I'm still left with a bigger question of where we go from here. Because this isn't just about one argument. It's about what that argument revealed. It showed me that, despite all the progress we've made, there are still deeper patterns that haven't been fully resolved. And if we're talking about building a future together, moving into a new home, potentially starting a family someday, those patterns matter. A lot. I don't want to overreact and throw away something meaningful because of one incident. But I also don't want to ignore something serious just because I care about her. Right now, I think the only honest answer is that I need time. Time to process, to reflect, and to figure out whether this is something I can accept and work through, or something that fundamentally changes how I feel about the relationship. Because at the end of the day, love alone isn't enough if there isn't a sense of emotional safety and stability. And that's what I'm trying to understand right now, whether we still have that, or if something important has shifted. I'm still trying to process everything, and I don't know what the right next step is. Has anyone been in a relationship where a partner had intense emotional outbursts like this, and things genuinely improved long-term? How do you rebuild a sense of emotional safety after witnessing something that felt so out of control? Is this something that can realistically be worked through with better communication or therapy, or is it usually a sign of deeper incompatibility? How do you tell the difference between someone struggling with emotions versus a pattern that won't change? And at what point do you decide whether to keep investing in the relationship or accept that it might not be sustainable in the long run?